Hi everyone, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name is Catherine, and if you do know me, I'm so grateful that you can make it here or make it back from wherever it is on the internet that you happen to drop in from. So before we begin this video, I want to make it known that I want this video to be accessible to everyone. My intention is that everyone should be able to digest this, and you may not be entirely comfortable with everything I discuss.
I'm an ex-Broadway performer who teaches theater to a lot of adolescent girls. And many of those girls want nothing more than to look exactly like Ariana. And somewhere along the way, a lot of you guys have let your pathological need to be seen as a girl's girl via choice feminism lose the plot for you. Going out of your way to protect and defend a celebrity that you don't even know while completely not caring about the impact that person might have on millions of young girls, that is a parasocial relationship if I've ever heard of one. Some of you are so programmed by binary thinking that you immediately label any type of neutral critical discourse as demonization of. You try to impose this ridiculous false reality that says you're either standing and defending her or you're attacking her, which is just not true. Some of y'all have such a hard time comprehending that multiple things are true. Absolutely, of course, we have a problem with society when it comes to being hypercritical of women's bodies, yes. But please don't draw a false equivalency between the inherently problematic nature of parasocial relationships and celebrity with the actual genuine desire to continue to clarify what a healthy standard of beauty is for young girls. Because it does affect them, and you're naive if you think it doesn't.
I just don't believe it is necessary or honestly even moral to have certain vulnerabilities inflamed within an audience when the discussion already concerns, familiar vulnerabilities, familiar pains, familiar triggers, familiar uncomfortabilities, even within myself, to be honest with you. I don't want this video to be something people either have to psychologically prepare for or only watch to feed some vulnerable, disordered component of the ego. Sometimes, honestly, I feel with delicate discussions like these, the algorithm feels in a lot of ways like an ego. Anyways, let's get going. Let's begin. So I want to anchor us in by saying that, guys, the truth is not all people can, nor should they be able to, or even always be expected to, ignore the visible manifestation of what are, more often than not, invisible internal plagues. And this is not because people are malicious or overly reactive, at least, at least not all of them. I think it is because it often escapes us that sensitivity itself is a cognitive faculty, right? It is the mechanism through which we detect threat, distortion, rupture, and relational instability. In other words, to be affected by these things, right? To be arrested by these things is not irrational, okay? It's not some moral indictment against you if you feel a certain way. It's actually, it's an indication of your capacity to be perceptive. There is, I think, a persistent illusion that these internal states can be indefinitely concealed, right? That we can mask these internal plagues. That what is privately disordered can be sustained in the illusion of public neutrality. But obviously, like I said in the beginning, internal fractures always acquire some kind of external grammar, right? Some kind of external expression, and everyone, the world, the audience, the people around you have to bear witness to it. Psychological dissonance and the illnesses of the interior find their articulation through behavior. I often find, just as an example, it often comes out through self-deprecating behavior, through habits, through statements about the self that exceed humor and feel uncomfortable precisely because people are sensitive to, people are alive to the fact that the habit may be masking something much more darkly insecure than you would otherwise betray. Sometimes it comes out through legalistic rigidity. Sometimes it comes out through projection. Sometimes it comes out where internal dissatisfaction is displaced against the world and against the people around that person as critique, as contempt, or just this unnecessary moral overcorrection. And obviously in more severe expressions, especially in more public expressions, these internal distinctions manifest as instability in relational continuity. I'm talking about the inability to remain present, right? An unhealthy dependency on distraction, an unhealthy dependency, I think, on the dopaminergic value of your own feelings as the primary regulator of attachment. People who exhibit these tendencies aggressively, okay, in my experience, this is not usually I insert research, but this is purely coming from personal experience, but these types of people tend to be prone to cheating, prone to detachment once the relational intensity declines. One could become prone to any toxic behavior, I believe, once the relationship stops serving the ego.
Oftentimes you find that the more love and compassion and understanding you give these people, the more they hate you and have resentment towards you. And I know this because I lived it. I've only ever loved one man in my life, truly. And I hated him for it because I treated him horribly, because I didn't like myself. And the funny part is I thought I did. I genuinely thought I liked myself. But it's not that I like myself. I just had an enormous ego.
Of course, all this means, that behavior becomes legible. It's not entirely self-contained. It becomes affecting to those exposed to it, right? And that also means it becomes scrutinizable.
Point of all this, it's not who is to blame. It is the pain that was inflicted on this woman and her child and her family that she did not ask for. It was not warranted. Not only did she go through this, not only did she have to go through it in the public eye, but she also went through it with somebody. It wasn't just another woman. It was a superstar with a giant fan base that I saw in the comment sections on this app saying, ew, Lily J needs a life. That's her whole identity. She's a literal doctor. Her identity is not that she is the scorned ex-wife of a doofus who happened to land a movie role close to a superstar who has a pattern of breaking up relationships for her own egos and insecurity issues. I know ego's singular. I was on a rant. Let me do my thing, okay? The point is, if any one of you were in Lily J's shoes, you would be on the edge. Do not lie. And you would hold a decent amount of hatred, spite, resentment, misery, all those feelings toward both Ethan and Ariana. Be honest with yourself.
But we need to be careful, even in our application of this conclusion, because the precise architecture of anybody's internal world, whether it be a family member, whether it be a celebrity, whether it be, honestly, it could be anyone, even to some extent yourself, the precise architecture of that, like I said, of that internal world can never be exhaustively inferred from its external expression. It is fundamentally hidden, right? You don't know. You may speculate, you may infer, you may psychoanalyze, you may construct these weird, online-based interpretive models that approach some respectable coherence. But unless you are in the midst of that play, you cannot, in any epistemic sense, verify the totality of another person's interiority. Unless, of course, of their own volition, the individual decides to confirm it, or there is some evidentiary disclosure that reveals it beyond ambiguity, beyond speculation, beyond rumor. But even then, what is revealed is always partial. So then, naturally, the question arises, what informs the social impropriety of judging? Or alternatively, the criminal passivity of refusing to judge? Because in my opinion, in my personal opinion, both errors are possible. And I know that not everybody, again, is going to agree with me on this, but genuinely, guys, just stick with me, follow with me as I try to make this case. There is a judgment that becomes cruelty, okay? Usually it informs some shame that kind of messes you up later in life. But we know this type of judgment, but there's also, on the other end of this, a refusal to judge that becomes cowardice, because eventually you lose someone to something you didn't have to, because somewhere along the way, right, the perceptual implications became more urgent than the person's life.
To try to use your word magic to convince people that they can't be fans of an artist if they are concerned about them. Stop attacking her. It's me and my girl Ari till we die. The real ones know. Real people that care about you in your life on a very personal level aren't going to be afraid to have those conversations with you. Those are the real people that love you. I can already hear you guys. What if hypothetically she was sick? What if hypothetically she had cancer? What would you say then? How bad would you feel? So what? What if she hypothetically did have cancer? See, I'm not saying that I think that she should be obligated to disclose anything that she doesn't feel comfortable to with the public. Even if she were sick and battling some unknown demon that we didn't know, that can be true. And I still don't want my young nieces and my young students idealizing that as their standard of health and beauty. I don't care whether she's sick or not. The fact of the matter is you still have girls glorifying her body. The result is still the same.
Humans are, in a very real sense, judgment-producing algorithms. Okay, you judge whether a bridge is sound, is structurally sound. You judge whether a person is trustworthy. You judge whether a physician is competent. You judge whether a friend is deceiving you. You judge whether a relationship is worth investing in based on whether it is stable or collapsing. See what I'm saying, right? The entire architecture of survival, of decision-making, of relational navigation depends on the faculty of judgment. The Greek verb employed actually carries a semantic field that could mean, to separate and distinguish, to render judgment, to pronounce a verdict, to exercise discernment. It could mean to evaluate, it could mean to assess, and I'm conscientizing you to this, okay? Not just to not just to overburden you with all of the interpretive realms burdened to the original word, but to show you guys that there is so much complication in the modern flattening of the phrase, do not judge, because then it becomes a prohibition against all evaluative thought whatsoever, right? When somebody says, in a lot of ways, sometimes in a lot of religious circles, do not judge, I often, depending on the person who says it, I feel like they're telling me to leave my brain at home. The more precise question then is not whether or not judgment is permitted, but especially so if you operate by any kind of moral code, any kind of religious code, right? What kind of judgment is ethically permitted in that imagination?
The biggest part that you guys are missing when you are comparing Ariana Grande to Karen Carpenter is the fact that Karen Carpenter was actively in recovery before she passed. She was actually gaining weight, and it was that weight gain that took her up out of here.
Because one of the most theologically and psychologically significant tensions in scripture is that it simultaneously affirms two truths that I think modern discourse struggles to hold together. Truth one, internal realities eventually become visible. Truth two, internal realities are never fully visible, right? Essentially, they remain irreducibly opaque. A tree becomes known by its fruit, right? Not because not because the fruit exhaustively reveals the tree, not because the fruit reveals nothing about the tree, because that's not rational either, but actually because at the very least, the fruit reveals something true about what informs the tree's expression. What I appreciate genuinely about the text is that it refuses, reductionism as it concerns the human heart, and as it concerns what expresses from the heart, right? The expressions of the human entity. Behavior can disclose some portion, right, of a person's interiority, but never exhaustively, right? And at the same time, behavior also masks and obscures interiority, but again, not exhaustively. Modern ideological frameworks often oscillate between these two extremes, okay? You've got this overconfident moralism that presumes access to another person's full interior narrative, purely based on observable behavior. And then on the other side of this, a kind of defensive epistemology that insists that, because we all appreciate that internal states are complex, external consequences should be treated as morally irrelevant or socially untouchable. Both positions fail to account for relational reality, because whether we like it or not, you guys, we are continuously, aggressively affected by each other, right? Arrested by each other, arrested by each other's pains, and in a lot of ways, encouraged by each other's victories, by each other's triumphs. We are, I don't know how else to get this across. We are so entangled, and because we know this, I think that's why we develop so many social rules against this principle, very much inconsistently applied. It breeds so many hypocrites. I mean, as an example, right, it is not illegal to comment on a person's body, their personal choices, their external expression, but trust and believe, it is morally inexcusable. At the same time, though, I do feel it intellectually naive and in a lot of ways just willfully ignorant to to find it to pretend that it is utterly perplexing that the external behaviors and visible expression of a person may have an effect on the people exposed to them. We are inevitably affected by things that are quote unquote not our business, and some people may choose to vocalize the extent of their discomfort, and others may opt to just deal with that discomfort internally. That's one of the biggest issues for me. I mean, there's so much outrage about the way people are affected rather than the inevitability that people are indeed affected. affected, as though sensitivity were in all ways, right, a selective burden, as though proximity to disorder, to pain, to dysfunction did not reconfigure psychology. I call the latter defensive ignorance, and honestly, it is tragic. There is, in my opinion, every evidence of that, okay? Every evidence of what I termed defensive ignorance in people who go as far as to impose some moral issue in those affected merely for the fact that they are affected. And to make things abundantly clear, I'm not arguing that individuals should now, because of this reality, right, become hyper vigilant of their own like individual expression. I'm not saying that you need to socially audit every internal fluctuation. Rather, I'm suggesting something much more restrained, much more responsible, but at the same time, yes, much more demanding. That the resolution of internal disorder is never private in its consequences, and you can do a lot of help or damage in how you apply that information, right, against others or even yourself.
I'm really the problem. Baby, I have so many unhealed wounds and trauma that now it affects literally all of my relationships that I'm getting into. I didn't realize something ain't right up here either. I be flipping out over the most craziest thing. Then I used to be the person that used to make it sound like it was the other person, when in reality, it was me. Like, I literally had a good man that was chill. That was, he was real chill, didn't really do too much. Like, y'all, when y'all get into these relationships, y'all gotta start coming healed. Especially if you want a person that's already healed their own self and that already got things under control. You gotta learn to control your own self, control those emotions. Because sometimes us as women, we be all over the place. And we really do be the problem. So I had to take time to myself so I could really work and focus on myself so I could be a better person for this man. Because he was the sweetest person. It was just me.
When we're speaking of vice, addiction, relational instability, internal fragmentation, the reorganization of the internal self invariably extends outward. It affects those in proximity, it affects relational fields. It changes trajectories beyond the individual. And again, I want to be careful here because that observation, it need not be burdensome or accusatory. The point is not that every person should be neurotically occupied with the possibility of affecting others. The point is that that influence is not optional. The question is not whether what exists within you will exert influence. The question is where that influence will be directed and what form it will eventually assume. Because it will assume some form. It always does. I think that's where the ancients, this is why I always go back to books and ancient philosophy, because they understood so many things that we feel we are like rediscovering in modernity, but really we're not. We're just recursing against these same principles, but they understood that no human being exists as an isolated moral unit. We are not self-contained organisms moving like through reality, through the ether with no consequence to one another. We are profoundly entangled creatures. We inherit one another's wounds. We participate in one another's flourishing and, unfortunately, in one another's collapse. And that's why I think scripture frequently frames human flourishing as a communal reality rather than just an individual achievement. The command to love your neighbor fundamentally presupposes that what happens inside you affects what happens around you. The pursuit of integrity, right, is never purely self-directed. Actually, its benefits overflow, but so do the consequences of disorder. Your healing may bless people you may never meet. Your courage strengthens people whose names you may never know. Your honesty, right, creates trust in places you may never see. And likewise, your unresolved dysfunction may wound people you never intended to harm. Your bitterness can literally become somebody else's insecurity. Your cowardice can become somebody else's suffering, and not necessarily because you were malicious, not because you were overly reactive or you didn't react enough. Underreactive doesn't feel like a word. But my point is, it's not always because somebody has malicious intent or because I want to extend the benefit of the doubt there. It's not because we always desire these outcomes. I think we often forget that we are entangled in more realities than we realize. The purpose of judgment was never to decide who is worthy of love, right? It was to recognize, it was to discern what leads to life and what leads away from it. And so I'll end off by saying something that may seem a little bit harsh, but you guys, it just needs to be said, okay? You do not become more loving by refusing to distinguish poison from nourishment, okay? You simply become easier to poison. That is all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope to see you very soon. I hope to see yeah, I will definitely be reading the comments. I always read the comments anyways, but thank you so much for lending your ear, lending me your time. Yeah, that's about it. If you'd like to support me, please, I'm always grateful. I'm really appreciative of your patience, of your time, of your investment in this channel just by your view. So I will hopefully see you very, very soon. I'll put up my links for contact and email. Oh yes, and my support links, I'll put those up. Otherwise, you have a lovely rest of your week, day. Don't know how, I don't know when I'm gonna see you guys, but yeah, always lovely to see you. You take care and goodbye.